So this is just like Sunday supper at my house. We hang out like this, we talk a little stuff about business, then we really get down to what we're looking for. The question for the general cast is, what initially attracted any of you to this project? Do you actually like food?
Very much.
Excellent.
Yeah, it turned out that we were all pretty into food by coincidence, and we're kind of around this incredible food as we were cooking, and we were being fed it. So that was a huge perk of doing this film.
And actually the cast, the fact that it was always going to be conceived as an international cast was very alluring, that we shot it in London. That was a really cool aspect, and very true to kitchens, as you know. You know, there's always tons of different languages going on, and
right.
It was a really awesome aspect of it.
Did you learn anything, in all of the intensive practice, was there anything that you learned as either a maitre d', a chef, a cooker, or a critic that you were surprised by or otherwise perplexed? Or was it also obvious, or are there nuance that you guys understood or start to capture?
Well, I was attracted by that film because I opened a restaurant myself 5 years ago. What I learned is that we are very far away from getting a Michelin star. The perfection, the level of, the quality in this restaurant where I was trained at Marcus Waring's restaurant in London is just incredible.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's fastidious. I mean, you did a very good job of capturing kind of the exasperation with the talent, and yet your complete faith behind it, which was evident without being so spoken so often. So it was really very real, because that's how the front of the house treats a lot of us cooks in the back of the time. It's like, yeah, all right, have your little fit, but come on, come on. You did great that way.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I was really interested in it. So in terms of being the critic, Uma, you walked in with the brilliant and supercilious way that I imagine you go into a lot of places, and when they bowed down to you, you did such a great job. Was it hard to pretend to be a critic, or was it a natural thing? No, I mean that, because when you're talking about food, she talked about food in the right way. It wasn't like it was just like blah, blah, blah.
Well, I was just a lot of fun the cast was very assembled to join everybody, but I liked the exasperation with Twitter and Yelp. I thought that was funny. The idea that the irritation that the crowds, the popular demand was over superseding opinion.
Right.
What do you feel? This question is good for you, actually, as a professional in the arena. Did we capture the?
Well, completely, because the pressure is so on, and as much as the social media forms a lot of the general opinion, it's still the main critic of the New York Times or of the London Standard or the papers that people read that really give you your bona fides. Like, you can have a lot of Yelps and people are like, yeah, whatever, those are all your cousins and we know it. And that doesn't diminish the value of Yelp to a consumer who's traveling around the world. But when you have 4 stars here or 3 stars in Michelin, you can, it's kind of like F you to anybody who ever challenged you as a critic, like you, or as a chef. You can say, look, whatever you think, here's the paper of record saying exactly what matters to us. So it's a really big part of our business. And as the young chefs try to figure out how they're part of the piece, Sam, your character is a testament to just how hard they've got to work and how much apparent suffering they have to do. Was that part of your situation?
Yeah, I guess so. I spent a lot of time in Marcus Waring's restaurant in the Barclay and studied one chef in particular and kind of watched him and learned his story and about where he came from. And these guys are in it because they're so passionate, because they work insane hours, obviously, as you know, and, for very little money, and because they just want to get it right, and they love the food and the whole thing behind it. And I studied this one guy, Jake, who was younger than me, but was Marcus's right-hand man. He would run the kitchen when Marcus wasn't around, and it was just fascinating to see. Yeah, he was like really kind of like quiet kind of kid, but when he switched it on, he was just this animal in the kitchen, But yeah, they're all covered in burns and slash marks from knives, and yeah, exactly.
Still have them even now. Just every now and then something tricky can happen.
Yeah.
Well, so did you in the screaming and passionate scenes that Bradley did so well? Did it feel like you were being yelled at, guys?
Well, yeah, it did.
I mean, Sienna mostly for that embarrassing turbo situation. I mean, you guys are actors, so you know what's going on. But how did that capture anything in the Waring kitchen? I imagine he's a little calmer than maybe our script led everyone to believe. Is that true?
He probably has his moments, but it has leveled out.
Right.
I think he can definitely go there.
Well, I think what happens as chefs mature, they realize that yelling is not the most effective way to change the behavior of the people that are working with you. And in fact, a quiet lecture delivered sotto voce, yet within earshot of the people that you work with, might shame you more into quickly. Because when I yell at it, or when I used to yell at someone, I would always have to go back and apologize, because I felt like an idiot. And then, of course, I've diminished everything I just yelled about to a whimpering little apology, and gee, you're doing okay anyway. So effectively, the yelling was such a crucial part of it. I mean, Bradley, you felt pretty jacked up about it because you did the throw pretty well on that. Did you talk to Marco about that, Marco Pierre White at all about that?
I did, yeah, and Marcus and Claire Smythe at Hospital Road,
Right.
And Gordon Ramsay. So I had and just watched.
Who was actually the PhD student of all PhD students of yelling chefs, right?
But what's so interesting, I just love the family of it all because you worked under Marco, so did Gordon, and so did
Right,
Marcus.
right.
So and I think Marco, and he will say it openly, has changed a lot over the years and has calmed down a lot. But no, there's tons of stories which you know more than anybody of. I think the movie was actually pretty tame.
Well, compared to Marco's worst days, yes.
Yeah.
But I think it captured probably more the 21st century vibe, right?
Yes,
I mean, that was
yes.
1985.
Right.
And, Marco would literally take scissors and cut guys' chef coats up
Right.
while they were on them just to diminish, like,
Right.
you don't deserve this. Snip, 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 snip,
Yeah.
snip. You're like, what crazed mind comes up with this way
yeah.
of torturing people in such a cool thing? And yet, the pressure and the intensity, when the Michelin Guide is in there, I think, without wrecking the movie, there's a scene where there's some sabotage that is so well done and so well thought out that it's just like, wow, that's a payoff that I thought was great.
And also, I always thought that the how erratic that the Adam character comes in the kitchen. It's all geared towards himself. I mean, it really is all it's all based in self-loathing that he screwed it up.
Well, right, and that's fundamentally why chefs yell, because they realize they didn't train their staff properly. The reason they're mad is because they should have known to train them for the inevitable fact that at 7:30 you have to move much faster than you do at 5:30, and you have to accept a window of acceptable variation. And if you don't do that, you're mad at them, but they're just like 17-year-old kids or 22-year-old kids. You have effed up, and you feel so bad about it, you're lashing at everybody they can. How was the food on set?
Unbelievable.
Like, you ate their real food?
Oh, well, I mean, we were cooking. I mean, we were cooking in the way that they set it up. Marcus created the dishes, and then we would have recipes. The mise were all set by the commies, and then all of the other cooks were.
Commies are not Soviets; they're the lesser level of chefs.
All the other cooks, they were not extra actors. They were cooks, people that work in Michelin-star restaurants around London. So we were cooking the food. So we were eating the food too.
And tasting it?
Oh yeah, all the time. We were testing constantly, but then we would actually, in between takes, eat a lot of the meat. Ricardo was just doing brilliant work in the grill.
So did anybody take home any recipes that they're going to cook at their house now?
Yes, turbot or turbo. I have eaten much more turbot than I ever thought I would, and can fillet it, which is exciting.
Right?
So I can buy a whole one and take it home, and that's like a good new skill. And also I can make pasta, so I've been making.
You did an amazing
homemade
scene where you
pasta,
were rolling it
yeah.
out with such aplomb. I'm like, she knows
she
how
really
to do
did.
this,
Yeah.
man.
She really did that in the scene. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was fantastic.
That was fantastic.
Yeah, it really
fun.
was.
It was-
People have no idea how hard that is to act, number one, but then make pasta while you're acting.
Well, because
Yeah.
at that point she wasn't acting; she was just making.
just
I was
doing
just
it.
being, man.
And that, but that was the sort of wonderful thing for all of us, is that we were actually got to do the work, and that's for an actor that's always the easiest
Right.
thing if you're actually doing it.
Well, so when the chefs that were actually helping you execute the mise en place,
Yeah.
were they the same ones every day, or were they
Same ones.
Oh, so they didn't have a job for a month.
That's
No.
right.
Like, they worked
That's right. They
only
all
with
came.
you.
Yeah.
Oh,
It felt like
wow.
a real brigade.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly what a real kitchen feels like.
And everybody got to know each other. And for example, when we had that scene where Adam berates everybody, they're all there.
Right.
And it really was.
And they're like, yes, somebody else is taking it right now. Right? I mean, because
Silently,
when that
absolutely.
stuff goes on, that's all you're really thinking about, is you're just trying to get as close to the corner and as away
Right.
from the center of attention as possible.
Of course.
Because, I mean, obviously, when someone makes a mistake, the whole kitchen pays for it. How much of awareness do you now have in a dining experience when you're sitting at a restaurant table? Like, will you ever, when you see, like, here's what happens in my family. We'll finish our appetizers, and we'll be done. And for 5 minutes, they'll watch us, and then a busboy will come up surreptitiously, quietly, getting ready to clear the table, and for some strange reason, my wife or my son picks a little something up off the plate, and the whole team has to back out again, because you can't clear the table while they're still eating. So do you ever notice anything about that in restaurants when you're going around?
The thing that I heard that was the most extraordinary thing was that if you're a table, obviously, of people, 5 of you, and you've ordered different things, and your main courses are ready and they're on the pass, if someone from that table stands up to go to the bathroom and it takes more than 2 minutes, every dish has to be thrown away.
Chucked.
So I just now, if I'm at a dinner table and there are people, I'm like, if we're waiting, you do not leave the table. You just don't go.
Right.
That was like.
Well, I mean, in New York now, because you have to go like 400 yards away from the restaurant to have a cigarette. Like, it
Right.
could be a
Oh,
month
yeah.
before they come back when you're waiting for the entrees. And like, you know, like a delicate piece of fish can't hold on 2 minutes. Certainly a ravioli can't either. Like, you got to throw it out and restart it. And
Yeah.
It's
I never thought about the smoking thing. You're right. Oh, this got to
Oh,
be a nightmare.
but they go so far away.
Yeah, it's gotta be a
Because we make
nightmare.
them go so far away.
Right.
Like, yes, you have to go to Washington Square Park, the very center. I can't possibly smoke in front of this. My guests are very upset with you. So now what do you think about when you have to wait a few more minutes at a reservation? Uma? You guys never wait for reservations.
Not with you, Mario.
Excellent. Perfect. But is there any sympathy toward the situation? I mean, you guys have seen it now from a very different way. I would say that among the people at this table, all of you have, in any of my restaurants, have always been incredibly respectful and most delightful. So you're welcome back at any time.
Thank you.
But there are people that throw a little fit, and they tend not to be the famous people. They tend to be the entitled people. Have you ever seen anything like that in a restaurant? And will you ever, in the restaurant's defense, come up to them and say, please?
It'd be weird to get involved at that point.
Right.
Like,
It would
with
be
like
weird.
a complete stranger. But like, they definitely get a bad look.
Right. That's good. That's good enough. That's good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but I remember when I was a kid, I remember being at a seafood restaurant, and then I was the guy who actually did it to me. I was a prep cook, and then he asked me what I put in the crab cakes, and I didn't
What'd you say?
understand what he was saying, and I was like, well, because he really wanted me to say as many ingredients as possible to tell me that my crab cakes weren't well made, because the more you put in them,
Right.
the worse it is.
Anything besides crab's already a mistake.
Exactly. Yeah, and I thought, what an asshole.
So he didn't trip you up, though.
No, I didn't really answer him. Then he went, and then he just explained how smart he was about food. Yeah.
That's something about New York and London, I imagine. That no
Although this
matter-
was Somers Point, New Jersey.
Somers Point, New Jersey. Obviously, a trading ground for New Yorkers. That's where they're learning how to be New Yorkers. Let's go down and embarrass the busboy at the crab place first and see how it feels. Right? Oh yeah, I did great. Let's go get on the train and be tough to somebody.
Right.
Oh, now we're in Manhattan. All right.
Here we go.
So as you go out to eat, I mean, at the fancy Michelin star restaurants, a lot of the trade is in the tasting menu. And the Michelin critics' alleged behavior, which we have yet to be able to figure out as well as you guys did in the movie. But are you more prone to order tasting menus or a la carte now?
Tasting menu.
If
Tasting
there's
menu?
tasting,
Yeah,
tasting.
of course, yeah.
And why is that? Because?
The experience,
Right.
you want the whole experience. I mean, if you don't have the time, obviously, it depends. But if you're going to go to a restaurant that has that option, you've gone to a really great place, you might as well commit.
It would be like going to the theater and say, you know, I don't want to see Hamilton. I'd like to see Kinky Boots, please.
When you're there.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
when you're there.
exactly.
You're like, actually,
Or,
tonight.
can
we're
I
not
skip the
doing-"
second act? I'm really a little tired tonight.
Yeah. Just a couple of monologues
Yeah,
from
right.
an old Coward thing,
Right.
and then we'll be good.
Right. That's hilarious. All right, so
I don't know where Hamilton and Kinky Boots came from.
Well,
How
they're
random
both,
is
they're
that?
both
Angry,
fabulous
angry,
musicals here in New York.
So random.
Bradley's auditioning for one of those two, apparently. All right, so that's enough of my questions. Let's hear what you guys have to ask. Start with you.
Thank you. Brad, you do an amazing job of.
There's a microphone.
You do an amazing job of conveying your character's complex inner life. How
Thank
did you
you.
relate to him personally? What did you draw on inside of you to portray him?
Well, I mean, I had a tremendous amount of research and being able to speak with people in that world. And then, you know, just the script was fantastic. And like if I had to relate to anything, that idea of trying to have a goal that you're setting out to do, and an obsession to do the best you can at that. I can definitely relate to that. But I think more than any other character I've played, I really relate. I saw how different I was from this guy because he lost the joy in what he did, and that's a hell of a thing to lose. I'm sure you concur, because food is so joyful, and if you've lost joy in cooking, then wow, you are lost. And that's where he is for so much of the movie. And then characters like Helene really sort of re-inject him with that thing that he lost back in Paris.
I have one question before the rest. My wife wants to know, she knows you didn't shuck 1,000,000 oysters, but did you shuck 10 of those oysters?
Oh, probably 60.
Because she said, I saw a lot of arms without any body, so I'm assuming that it was a prep cook.
No, it was me.
It was you.
Yeah, there's no double in the whole movie.
I told her
Yeah.
so.
But in fact,
right.
they did this thing where the guy loosened about 10 of them in the
Right.
beginning, but we got through them in like
Seconds,
half a day.
seconds, right, exactly.
So I was like, oh.
All right, I better go in now.
And I had this stupid idea that I'd bring the bag out, which wasn't
Right?
right.
Look good, though, look good.
No, it was good, but
Right.
I mean, yeah. But I was so lucky. That was the first day of shooting, and I mean, as you know, because I have shucked oysters and I was a prep cook, and if you're ever going to slice your hand, it's shucking an oyster.
Mm-hmm.
And I really thought. I even said to John, I said, bro, I mean, just to let you know, this goes south.
We got 2 weeks of postponed.
Yeah. You better find a lot of other stuff to shoot.
Right, exactly. Yes, sir.
Congratulate each of you for the emotional integrity of your performances. The food aside, I wanted to throw my microwave out when I came home, but I wanted to ask Ms. Miller and Mr. Cooper, this is a film on many levels of recovery and also reinvention. And I'd like to go out of the kitchen for a moment and just both of you talk about how you saw your character and going through the different phases, particularly Mr. Cooper with the recovery. It was not just from substance abuse, it was from a lot of other things too.
Well, in terms of what I was just commenting on before, I think that we find this guy, he's white knuckling it. He pitches to Tony, how has all the answers, and he knows exactly what he's going to do. But he has absolutely no clue, really, because he's the same guy he was, just minus all the things that he did to inoculate himself from his emotions. So you're sort of watching this guy just actually spiral even further and further down in the movie, the way that I saw it.
For me, I think I really liked the humanity of this character and how honest it was. She's a single mother. She's doing her best. She's passionate about cooking, but she's juggling a lot of balls, and everything seems to be compromised at a certain point. And she's trying her best. And I just think that it was, I wanted it to be a very real person. I didn't want to wear makeup or kind of portray it in any inauthentic way possible, because the women that I've met that work in these kitchens, it's a very male-dominated environment. They have to be really tough and strong, and she's got depth and she's got pain, and it resonated.
I thought the movie had a lot. It was very much like a sports film in another way, in that it had the sort of arc of, the comeback story, the competition. Did any of you feel the same way? And did you at all think about it in terms of that sort of? And you, of course, experienced it with the chef television shows and all. Could you talk about the competitive side of the film and how you guys thought about it? And did you get passionately into that competition?
It's funny you say that. We did, and in no way would I ever compare it to Hoosiers, and that movie is unbelievable. but we were talking about, I loved when Gene Hackman, moved to this town, living in Barbara Hershey's house, and like helping her sort of, walks out when she's tilling the field at one point in the middle of the winter, and you just realize that he's just so not in his element. Where was he before? And we talked about that specific aspect of the character, because that character is a little similar to Adam Jones, actually, in a way, what his arc. But yeah, it's very much, the Reese character, you have this nemesis, this other guy who's competing and hiding just how competitive one is. But then we see that little sort of slice of his personal life when he's completely destroying his restaurant just because of a decent review that his old partner got.
Yes, ma'am. You. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. There's a beautiful connection between creating a meal and creating a relationship, and I thought that was just really lovely in the film. Oh, wow. Also, sense memory when you eat a specific meal. I was wondering what your favorite meals are that might draw a sense memory out for you.
It's so hard. We've obviously been answering a lot of food questions, and there are so many different types of foods. But for me, there's something really comforting about my mum's roast chicken.
And yesterday I had a fried black rice, and I'm half Spanish. I know that from Spain. My mom does that a lot too. And but it was spectacular in a restaurant called Estella. Yeah. Boy, the crispy fried black rice is just.
Yeah, I guess a classic Sunday roast. It's always kind of something that kind of reminds you of home and comfort and being a child, I guess, which is lovely. Yeah.
You know, the thing about food is, if you throw out any food, I'll tell you what the memory is. I mean, that's the great thing. It really is true.
Sunday gravy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, grandmother. Actually, pulling it out of the freezer and freezing my hand because it was so cold. Because we used to freeze the gravy, for the week. She would make it on Sunday, and then we just stack the freezer with it.
I think that's the thing about food, though. It's just so much more than eating for me, and I think for anyone who appreciates it and like lives to eat, which somehow all of us pretty much do. But the idea of like everybody getting together around food and what that does for relationships and friendships, and it's like kind of the most joyful thing about being alive. So it's a difficult question to answer, because
Well,
of
the
that.
family meal share was probably the most crystallized moment when you were finally on the team. That was when everyone realized, oh yes, he's going to have dinner with us, and there was a satisfaction on the whole team, very much like when you have dinner with your family and everyone all of a sudden shows up. Oh wow, we're all here. This is something really remarkable. And nutrition becomes more than just comestible. It becomes emotional, and there's something to that in the shared experience, particularly when you go through a dinner service and work so hard together with people you don't even have to love every day, but you need them then. And then at the end, you can look back at each other and say, yeah, we did it. We just kicked
Do you
that
do that
ass."
at your restaurants?
Yeah, always.
Yeah, because
Every night.
I never had that experience. We never had the family meal.
We
where I
have
worked.
in all of our restaurants, because we're lunch and dinner, we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner family meals.
Oh, that's
And you
amazing.
just stop in.
So
And the
important.
late dinner family meal is like the 12:30 leftover bits of steak put in the pasta with everything, and
Right.
that's the best one. Yes.
Actually, Mario, this question is for you, but the other members of the cast can add in as well. After an entire day of working with very expensive ingredients and all sorts of fancy techniques, when a chef goes home and cooks for himself, what does he like to eat?
I like very simple things, and it's almost always based on product as opposed to technique. So a simple duck egg from the farm market, over easy, with a slice of fontina, and as it is in season right now, some shavings of white truffle. Just make you feel like, yes, I'm alone, but I'm the king of alone. And that's, for me, it's the simple stuff. Or whatever, you make a quesadilla and you put some interesting stuff on it that you've got. Leftovers play a big part of my favorite things to eat, because you're not going to sit there and grill a whole steak at 1 o'clock in the morning. But if they'd had steak at the dinner table at the house, because I'm home at 6 o'clock every night for dinner, and then I go back to work. So I know what there's in the fridge when I'm thinking about what I might make when I get home.
What do you think about the whole thing about chefs being rock stars these days? And are any of you enamored with chefs that you felt like, oh my God, this is somebody really cool that I'd like to meet?
When I was just doing research, that White Heat, that cookbook.
Yeah.
That came out about that this
Marco Pierre White,
Yeah,
this
the
fantastic-
photographer had taken a bunch of photographs of this young chef, and there's that one photograph where he looks like Jim Morrison with the cigarette.
Cigarette hanging down.
Yeah.
And a sturgeon on his lap.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, and you just think, oh, there's this sort of, this mythical figure.
Right.
So it really was like a moment in time.
Well, when people saw that, they suddenly thought, hey, maybe being a chef is kind of cool.
Right, exactly.
Because before
It
that,
all
it wasn't.
changed.
Before that,
No.
it was in the back of the
It
house.
was the hat that's like
it was ugly,
5 feet
dirty.
tall.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Or the guy in the in the Italian guy T-shirt smoking a cigarette out by the dumpster.
Right.
What's up for dinner tonight?
Right. Right. And to have a guy like that talk about food in such a passionate
Right.
way, you're like, oh, that was like a whole new
Well, that was
thing.
my first real mentor, Marco Pierre White, and I remember just thinking, the world is now suddenly something far more interesting. He would take little tagliatelle and take oysters and put them in a little bit of the broth with a little bit of butter and then caviar and some raspberry vinaigrette and then put it back in the shell and put it under the gratin dish. You're like, Mom never made spaghetti like that.
And this
It
is a
was
guy-
so intoxicatingly interesting.
And this is a guy who got 3 stars and at that time had never cooked in France.
Right.
Which was like, and he was making
English
French
born, never
cuisine.
been to France.
Yeah, and
First
got 3
English
stars.
born guy for 3-star
Yeah.
Michelin. And the youngest at that
And the
time.
youngest, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
This question is for the movie cooks on the stage. Being around food so much while you were making the movie, did any of you gain weight? And if you did, what did you do to lose the weight or to not gain the weight in the first place?
Yeah, I think we all had to be pretty careful about kind of the amount of butter that was on set and all that kind of stuff. Because you constantly, I think, like, they're constantly eating, the chefs, they're constantly tasting, constantly kind of, and, you know, myself and Sienna were by a particularly tasty station.
That beef sauce.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
It's basically butter, but it was so, I just
It was
had a
amazing.
spoon, like,
Yeah. Yeah, you just had to be careful with it, yeah.
At the same time, you're working so intensely, and it's physically really exhausting to be in that environment. It's boiling hot, so the kind of anxiety and adrenaline and focus that takes is probably burning off the beef sauce.
I was in the process of losing weight to do a play. And so I was trying to lose like 40 pounds for The Elephant Man. So it was kind of a nightmare to do a cooking movie in between. But if you do watch the film, again, you'll see scenes where my face is like 2 inches wider than other times. Because we shot out a sequence. But it was kind of nice. He was lumbering. And I don't know, I'm glad that I had that weight, actually. It worked, I thought.
I gained 2 pounds watching the movie. Yes, in the red, ma'am.
Hi, this question is for Sienna, Bradley, and Uma. What scene or part of the movie do you think was the biggest challenge, and what was the most fun?
The biggest challenge for me was the scene where Bradley and I had that confrontation where he called me an infection. There was just something about the atmosphere on that day, and I think having worked together so intensely on American Sniper, and we'd sort of got to a level of trust with each other as actors where we could just kind of get quite deep quite quickly, and it felt very intense, very real, and I think it just really affected the environment, and one of those things, it was kind of cathartic and very interesting and very dark, but hard to go through that with someone that, you know, with your friend. And then we had this kind of enough of a good relationship and of a good understanding of each other to be able to avoid each other for the rest of the day without having to apologize or explain why. But it was just a pretty real moment. And then at the end of your day, you're like, that was a great day, because that's the weird thing about being an actor. Like, the horrible stuff is what makes you feel good. But the best part of it for me was the training and learning these skills and being around this incredible cast. We all became really close, and we laughed a lot, and we worked in a kitchen. We were chefs, and we really did it. There was no doubles, as Bradley said. And to have that experience of really living another profession is one of the most exciting things of our job, I think.
I mean, I just had one scene, so, well, three. You know. But anyway, it was a pleasure. It was just fun. I just enjoyed myself.
Yeah, that scene was pretty brutal with Uma.
Yeah, we cried the whole
that was
time.
a tough one.
Second half of the day.
I think the scene with Matthew Rhys was probably the most shocking one. That's at the end of the movie when he shows up at his nemesis restaurant. It was late at night. We didn't have much time, and the bag thing just sort of happened in one of the takes, and then. You know, it just feels vulnerable when you're doing something like that in front of 12 people that you don't know at all, the chefs in Rhys's restaurant. But ultimately, it was beautiful because Matthew Rhys, who plays Rhys, was just incredible. And we didn't really know each other at all. And then next thing you know, he's, caressing me and trying to calm me down. I mean, it was really kind of, and we're bonded forever. Matter of fact, I haven't really seen him since. And I look forward to seeing him tonight because we looked at each other after and it was like why we both love doing what we do is to be able to really put yourself in imaginary circumstances and hope that accidents like putting a bag on your head and realizing you can kill yourself happen. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I had no idea until I saw the movie about this idea of food trends that, you can come back after a few years and everybody will say, the way you were preparing that's all wrong today. We're doing it all differently. So I wanted to know from the actors if there were any food trends today that you sort of dislike or hate or think are stupid. And for Sienna and Uma, being fashionable people that you are, your aesthetics about fashion, how do trends influence that?
I think it's very important to avoid trends. But, that's just because I'm me, because I've been doing it for so long.
Yeah, I don't really follow kind of like, oh, that's the cool thing to wear. And, I sort of have an aesthetic that I like. I'm sure it's the same as everyone sitting at this table. You kind of wear what you think is nice and what makes you feel good. And food trends, no, I think I'd try anything. There's nothing that I feel, first of all, I'm not particularly aware of them.
But they make a big point in the movie of saying...
Well, the sous vide, I think that food is, I think sous vide stuff is delicious, but I also like barbecue stuff, so.
Hey guys, congratulations on the movie. I really loved it. It's just like a great mix of like a dramatic film and like chef's table-esque food scenes that look beautiful. I wish there were more movies like this to watch. A lot of us won't get the chance to talk to somebody like Marco or Marcus. I was wondering if, Sienna, you talked a little bit about the tips and the tricks that you learned as a chef. If there was one thing that you'll take away from this set as far as a food hack or a kitchen tip that you'll be using for the rest of your days, and maybe Daniel about getting a table. And Bradley, I love how you treated the suite in the Langham. Is that mimic at all how you are with your real hotel rooms, with room service everywhere and all that?
No, I'm the opposite. Yeah. Yeah, no, not like, I would feel horrible if I'd left a room like that. Yeah. Spoon, we were talking about this yesterday. I always thought spoon was the sort of bastard utensil, but bastard child, the utensil. But it's the most, it's the optimal, most worthwhile and an essential element to any cook if they're going to cook. And I did not know that before. And also the great thing, I loved, I got to, Marco and Gordon talked about plating food and just, once you make a choice, live with it. Don't, if you ever see a chef, sort of, and then it's over. It's like, and they were so clear about that when I was plating food in the movie. I thought that was really interesting. Have your vision, improvise with it, and then that's it. Would you agree with that?
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
Once you second guess yourself in any craft, you're
Yeah.
gone, you're done. Yes, ma'am. Oh, sorry.
Oh, well, I think I just being taught how to cook fish, which is like a simple, delicious thing, but really easy to get wrong. And I now have a pretty solid and well-rehearsed technique as to how to cook fish pretty well, and it's impressive at a dinner party. So that's nice.
Hi. One of the things that keep coming up in the movie is that I would say there's a lot of emphasis placed on pride, respect, and validation for one's work. And this is a two-part question. If any of the cast members wants to answer this, what gives you validation or pride in your work? And the second part of the question is, can you talk about John Wells' directing style in this very, interesting movie?
I personally, I'd say being able to, having a good day's work, I'd say, feeling like I have given it my all, and being with people like the people up here, and feeling that we actually created something together. That gives me great fulfillment. And somebody like John Wells creates an environment where that can happen. For example, when I was just mentioning the scene with Matthew Rhys, I mean, you have to have a director that knows exactly what he or she wants and is really inviting the collaborative experience, which is for me, all the years that I've worked, the best directors are the ones who are the most collaborative, always. And he was like that, and always willing to hear from everybody, and treated every single person with the same value. It was the guy who was a real cook who was in the back if he had an idea, he would listen to it just as much as if I said something. And those aspects of a director, that you want to gravitate towards people like that.
Yeah, I think the validation question is complicated because it's. I think if it depends. It really has to come from somewhere in you, and I've certainly had experiences in the past where I felt like on that particular day maybe I didn't show up to the degree that I wish I had, and it's hard to feel fulfilled regardless of what the response is to that. I think you really have to know that you've done everything you can to put everything you can into what you're working on, and that in itself is validation, because ultimately it is a question of taste, and these things do ebb and flow, and people like stuff and don't, and I read reviews of films that I adore and they're terrible, and vice versa. It's just not personal. It's, everybody has their own opinions. So I think you have to kind of turn down the noise on too much praise or criticism and just do your best.
I find it other actors and other creative people in films too. But when another actor is nice to you, it's very, very moving. You're sort of surprised, like, oh, really? Thanks. It's people who really understand what it's like. It's most impactful sometimes.
Finding truth in moments as well is always a lovely thing. Like, it could be a look, it could be anything, but if it's a genuine thing, you guys will feel that, and as a result, it will resonate off you, and then the audience will feel it. And I think that in itself, even if it's not fireworks, is validation enough to make you go, I'm doing my job right, I guess. Yeah.
Fantastic. 2 more questions. In the back, ma'am?
Yes, Mario, this question is for you. You spoke on the 3-star Michelins. I was wondering, how does one become one, and what are the aspects of becoming after they become one, what makes the judges so great in their critiques?
Well, the Michelin Guide is very anonymous. We never know who they are, and they present it a little bit in the movie like they could have kind of figured it out, and maybe in Europe it's a little bit different, but the Michelin Guide in America is a little harder to figure out because, like, Del Posto has 1 star and the Spotted Pig have 1 star. So if you come from another town and you're using the book and you're thinking, well, I just went to the Del Posto, let me go to the Spotted Pig, you might be surprised or even discomforted by it because it's an entirely different experience. So the judging is something we're always trying to figure out, and we don't really get to question them. But it's certainly a prize, and one of the things that we do in the restaurant business is if we're not treated well in a guidebook, we tell all our friends, no one reads that book, who cares? But if you're in the book, oh yeah, this is probably one of the most influential books. So we're always trying to crack it, but at the end of the day, and it goes back to the validation question, we're really cooking for ourselves in our kitchen, and we're really just trying to figure out how to share that experience in the best way that we find it exciting, knowing and paying attention to every cook in the world and finding out what they're doing and what's going on in the ingredients. And a lot of customers come in and they don't really care about any information at all. They want something to eat, they really want to talk with their friends, and they really don't want to talk to a waiter or hear about the chef's passions because they're just there for something. So finding a way to bridge all of those options is having great front of the house staff who can read the customer and say, these people are really interested, maybe you want to go talk to them. Or maybe these people don't really want to hear about anything, don't go near their table, like they're busy. And that's kind of what the guidebook kind of rewards, is our ability to make that experience seamless for any level of different kinds of groups of people that come in. But fundamentally, we're cooking for ourselves, and we're building a restaurant so that we are most impressed with what we do. And that's the validation when we look and other chefs come in and say, wow, that was a good thing. That was a great thing. Yeah. Last one, ma'am in the back.
Yes, for the cast members, what kind of tippers are you?
I'll bet you these are all very good tippers.
England is really bad with tipping. It's just not in any way a part of the culture that it is here. And it's often it's included, but it would be 10%. And if it's not, you can be as generous as you want. But like in a taxi, you don't have to tip. It's just different. I guess the wages are maybe higher, and that doesn't balance out the same. But here, that's where people make their money, is on tips. So you better be conscious of that.
Yeah, same in Germany, it's 10%. So it always takes me a day until I understand. I always get these strange looks. The first day I'm here, it's like...
Oh, no, as soon as the American waiter hears a European accent, they're like, oh, here's one for the house. Yes, last question.
Follow up
Yes.
Bradley, you've come out in support of Jennifer Lawrence's comments about wage equality for women, which actually kind of parallels your character's growth in his relationship to women, treating them as equals. Would you like to comment on that, on stepping forward? Congratulations to you on that.
Well, I don't, thank you, but I don't, there's nothing to really congratulate. It was just sort of, I mean, if anybody's congratulated, Sienna, who took a stand, a very huge stand. Not to put you on the spot. Anyway. No, all I was saying was that it's a tricky thing to talk about money. I'm never aware what anybody else gets unless you're approached to give some of your money because there, to make a movie is getting harder and harder, and people are paying less and less, and people are always taking pay cuts. That's my experience. So the only time you ever find out about somebody else is if you have to divvy up the pie differently so someone will come on and do it. But, you're not aware of what other people are getting also. So why not just be transparent and say, okay, if here's the pie, let's divvy it up, and let's talk about it.
I mean, wage equality is unassailable, just like marriage equality is unassailable. These are things that in 40 years we'll look back and be like, wow, that's just like not letting people on the bus. So it's inevitably that it's going to happen. It's just a question of who's going to take the heat on the first day or the first prize, and then it'll all kind of settle out. It has to. It's natural. It will be equilibrium. Thank you all.